Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of Back of the Shelf, a board gaming podcast that considers the underrated and overlooked board games on our shelves. I am one of your hosts, Jerry, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ben. Say hello, Ben.
Hello, Gerald.
And Dave. Say hello, Dave.
Hello.
And this week's special guest, our buddy, also known as Dave. Good day to you, sir. How are you?
Hello, Gerald. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem whatsoever. It's absolutely our pleasure. Quick fire question, though, Dave. Euro or Ameritrash? What's your answer?
Probably Euro.
Oh, okay, that's obviously incorrect, because the correct answer is, of course, it depends on the tastes and needs of the board game group. Tough start. I've got to say...
Of course, that's what I was going to say.
Your answer was actually quite a lot more selfish than I thought it was going to be. It's a tough start. Terrible start. Well, let's move on. It's all a bit awkward now, but nevertheless. Well, Dave, what are you doing here on today's episode of Back of the Shelf?
I'm here to bring a game to the table that I think deserves a bit more recognition.
Absolutely. And I do believe you're going to be partaking in our shelf space this week.
Indeed I am. It's a bit of a Marmite flavour this week.
Okay, we'll look forward to it. Perfect. Well, do you know what? In having this conversation with you, I've just realised there exists the slight conundrum of having two Daves on the show right now. So as not to confuse our listeners, I guess I'll put it to the panel. I don't suppose there are any suggestions to differentiate between you both. Something on the lines of weak Dave and mega strong Dave, or ugly Dave and super sexy Dave.
Are we flipping a coin over this, or...?
Well, I think you know who I'm talking about. But nevertheless, any suggestions? Are we just going to stick with Dave and Dave?
I'd like to suggest a new host, please. That would be great.
You are welcome, sir. You are welcome. How about we go by your... Would it be all right to go with McTav?
Yeah, let's go with that.
McTav.
Instagram, Dav McTav.
Dav McTav, and then people won't get confused. Well, okay, now that's all dealt with, let's take a moment to thank our listeners and followers. We very much appreciate your support and love hearing from you on all our different interweb devices. Dave, if people want to get in contact with the show and heckle and argue with Ben, how can they go about doing it?
Okay, to heckle and argue with Ben, you can go on Facebook at Back of the Shelf Podcast, or you can find us on Instagram at back.of.the.shelf. I'm getting faster with that.
Oh, it rolls off the tongue.
You can go to Twitter at BackShelfPod. And you can also now find us on YouTube, where you'll find a trailer and our up-to-date episodes.
Oh, how fancy. It's all very professional now, isn't it?
It's getting there, yeah.
Well, now that you all know how to get in contact with us, and before we hear each of our picks for this week's episode, I wanted to take a bit of time to talk about me, because frankly I'm very important to, I know, you guys and the show itself. And I know you guys are such philanthropists and good friends. I know for a fact, and without having to ask, even though I'm going to ask, I wanted to see, how would you help me relax? First of all, I need you to suggest a relaxing activity. Something to help me forget my trials and tribulations of the week. Second one, obviously, a board game to play, but a board game that's going to help me unwind, it's going to help me loosen up. You know, a board game that's going to help me become as relaxed as, like, I don't know, a tranquilized sea otter on his way to a new life in a wildlife reservation, that kind of thing. So, Dave, why don't we start with you? I know you've already got some answers. Well, stirring in your head, probably, maybe. How would you help me relax? Activity and a board game.
For the activity, we are going to do some colouring in.
Oh, mindfulness colouring. What would we colour in?
Black and white pictures of... black and white board game covers, I'd imagine, would be good.
Ah, that's a great idea. I'd love to do that. Yeah, I've always fancied designing my own game covers as well. Maybe we could do that.
No, you're trying to relax, not be stressed out.
Oh, we're just colouring in what already exists.
What we'll do is we'll pick one, like, say, Castles of Burgundy, which you chose as the best art ever last
Obviously.
week.
I mean, just the best art in general, nothing to do with board games, just in general.
You don't even have to switch crayons. I'll give you one brown crayon. There you go. Done.
Ooh. Okay. I'm not too sure I like that, what you said about Castles of Burgundy there, but we'll let that one slide.
I'd like to state for the record, I love Castles of Burgundy, and this in no way reflects on my opinion of the game.
And its artwork.
Nor the art. The art's great. As for the game, we're playing a nice relaxing game. Ooh. I've got one. Santa Monica.
Oh. That's actually quite a good choice.
Which is both calming and stressful in equal measure.
A very calming theme. Chilling on the boardwalk, buying some tacos, checking out the volleyball. I like your answers. Mindfulness, colouring, and a bit of Santa Monica.
And then all of a sudden, visitors arrive over on your beach, and you've got to allocate them places, and then you start losing points.
Thank you for your choices. I mean, that sounds like a wonderful Saturday of relaxation. I proffer the same question to Ben. What would your choices for relaxing activity and relaxing board game be?
I think if we had a solid 6 hours free, we would take all of your games out of their shelves and we have a really good chat about how to put them back.
Oh my goodness.
Based on a theme or some sort of like a real, like, are we going to do it on weight or theme or color or do they fit together?
Instantly, the tension is released from my body. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic answer. Oh my goodness. I mean, so many ways we could organize the shelves. I would love to have a go at the color, kind of gradients of color. Envious of those board games collections where you can do that sort of thing. Fantastic answer, sir. Oh gosh, I don't know.
I've been outdone.
Too much.
And then,
yes.
And then we've done that. We've sat down. We can look at the shelves, admire them, love them, and then we'd get viticulture out. We'd set it all out, and we would just sit, 3 or 4 of us, and just gently make wine and sell it.
Love it. Perfect answer. That's a perfect answer. That can't be surpassed, or can it, McTav? If you were gonna try to relax me.
I was going to go a little bit of a different route. We could go for a nice shoulder and head massage, just to leave the stresses of the week.
Okay, shoulder and back.
And
nice.
After that, I think you need to take your stress out on a bit of a dexterity game. I think we need a bit of crokinole.
I can flick my stress away.
Yeah, exactly. Take it out on those little discs.
Oh man, yeah, I love taking my stress and anger out on little discs. That sounds dreamy.
Exactly.
Flicking those things as hard as I can across the board, dropping some 20s. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. All wonderful answers. I mean, actually, I'm going to put it to our listeners to decide. I put it out there right now. Obviously, if you have any suggestions of your own as well for relaxing games and how to relax me, but otherwise, which do you think was the best choice? From Dave, McTav and Ben. A relaxing game of Santa Monica and, what was our relaxing activity?
Colouring in.
Oh, mindfulness colouring. Yes, of course.
So it was very specifically board game covers.
Board game covers, yes. Or was it Ben's choice of viticulture, organising shelves? Delicious. Or McTav's crokinole, aggressive crokinole from the sounds of it. Shoulder and back massage. Well, I'll leave it up to my listeners. You all know how to get into contact with the show. But onwards and upwards, because we need to hear this week's back of the shelf picks. Last episode, we dated our personal arguments for the board games Six Nimmt, Cockroach Poker, and Adrenaline to make a vigorous return to your board gaming tables. So let's get to the crux of the matter, this week's choices. As I said before, I'm going to hand the reins over to McTav. He's going to take my pick for this week. So, McTav, you have the floor. What is your pick for this week's episode of Back of the Shelf?
Okay, I'm sorry about this, but I've gone for a huge one.
I like how you instantly, before you started, you've apologised.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's a good setup. I like that.
I'm excited.
I'm excited as well.
So this game is a massive 2-player game that's quite well known, but I think there's a lot of people that don't know about it yet, so I want to get the word out there. And this game is Sekigahara, the Unification of Japan.
Oh.
I've gone big here.
That's really big. So, that's got serious really quickly.
It's ranked, I was doing some digging this morning, and it's ranked quite high on Board Game Geek, but not by many people. It's got quite a low count on the reviews. And I think because it's a game that's based on Japanese history, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably quite hard to get hold of. I think this is worthy of my pick. If we start with the box looks like a textbook. It looks like a history textbook from school. It's got beautiful artwork, but yeah, it looks like a textbook. It's the remaking of the Battle of Tsukigahara in Japan that was fought in 1600. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the history too much.
I was about to say, actually, Wikipedia. Would you mind giving us a quick breakdown of the Battle of Sekigahara? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I can do as best as I can.
Oh, no, wait. No, please don't.
Okay. We've only got a few minutes to go through this. Well, maybe we can tag that onto the end of the episode as a little...
That'll be our special bonus episode.
Yeah. So the game is a monster 2-player game that can go on for 2 to 3 hours. It's one of those games that could be seen as a once-a-year experience. It was one of the first big games that I was introduced to by co-presenter Dave here, and got completely immersed into the board itself, which is a beautiful artwork board with a map of Japan. Basically, you are taking control of 2 massive armies vying for control for Japan at the time of 1600. The game is placed so you've got blocks that form your armies.
It's a block war game.
Yes. Basically, you take your blocks and you move them around the routes that are on the board. You've got 7 turns, which are for the 7 weeks that the battle took place in real life.
I remember looking at it and thinking, 7 turns, that's nothing. This game's going to be so quick. But over 7 turns, you have 2 phases, so you actually have like 14 turns. But even 14 turns doesn't sound like a lot until you actually start playing, and then one move of blocks can completely change the entire outcome of the war that you're going for, which is amazing.
It's a true experience. Mm-hmm. With the blocks, you're moving them around to try and vie for position to set off the victory conditions, which is usually killing the leader of the opposing army, or in one case capturing the son of one of the leaders. The beauty of the game is the way it displays the loyalty and the defections between the different factions on both army sides.
Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, so with the blocks, they've got all of the symbols of the different factions, and they correspond to the cards which you can collect throughout the game to get reinforcements.
So you have the blocks, and the cards trigger the strength on the blocks?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Huh.
This is why I fell in love with it, actually, because somebody could come in with literally 16 blocks stacked against a group of 5 blocks, for example, but the person with 16 blocks might only have 2 cards that match blocks in that stack, whereas the person with 5 blocks might have 5 cards, and therefore they have more power.
Ooh, so it's bluffing.
When somebody plays a block that matches a card, if you play the traitor card, then the opposing player has to play another card that also matches the block they've just played, or they lose that block to you and that block joins your fight. There's always this possibility that you might go in with all your plans laid out and you think nothing could go wrong, and then somebody plays that card on you and everything goes wrong.
Exactly.
I remember going to Yucatan and thinking, I look at this and think this is going to be easy because it's just a few blocks and a few symbols, right? I bounced off this so hard because there's a lot to it, isn't there?
There is a lot, but it's actually considered quite a basic war game. It's almost considered an entry-level block war game for those that haven't played war games before. But I think it's one of those... That's like saying Memoir's a gateway game. It's only that level if you've got some experience of other types of games before.
So why, if this is the entry-level war game, why is this not more widely known?
I think it goes back to... It's quite a specific theme that's more to Japanese history. I don't think it's something you would go out of your way to look for. And I think in this case it took quite a lot of digging for you to find this, didn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it's because it's from GMT as well. And GMT are huge, but they only work on a P500 system, as I understand, which means if they have 500 or more pre-orders, then they'll print that game. I think it's a good choice. I agree. I think it's underrated.
It's one of those things as well where you pertain to this beginning, McTav, whether you talk about underrated in the wider community. I think it's quite high under war games, isn't it?
It's number 5.
Yes, it is.
You're number 5, right? Number 5 under war games.
Number 5.
But I think you have to be very much of that ilk. If you have to be into your war games to know Sekigahara.
You have to be introduced.
Yeah, you have to be introduced to it. Because I wasn't seeking out war games. I played the big contenders and everything. And I'd had my fair share of block war games as well. From you talk about Commands and Colours series of games. And obviously Memoir's been mentioned. But it wasn't until I started delving into that rabbit hole of war games that I realised there's this whole other strata of board gaming and all these different niches. I mean, I hadn't even touched upon GNT games and all that sort of stuff. I knew nothing about them. But Sekigahara is kind of my introduction to that. It felt like that kind of bridging of the gap between what I consider to be all those mainstream board games to the world of war gaming. Well, in the board gaming sense.
It's one of those games that's in my collection that I'll never get rid of. A lot of people, when they ask online and they say, oh, I'm looking for a war game, we played 2-player mainly, I'd like a 2-player war game, you're always going to get Star Wars Rebellion. Twilight Struggle is usually recommended, but Sekigahara is usually about 5 or 6 posts down the list. And it's quite often met with, oh, Sekigahara, I've not heard of that, I'll look that up.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, if you're a board gamer who's interested in war games, although it seems quite intimidating on the surface, once you get into it, there's a lot of mechanics and terms in there that will be familiar to you. And then once you click, you'll be like, oh, this is just a board game for 2 players, really. But you're playing a war game. And I think that's where Sekigahara straddles like both sides really well.
So one for like the general board gaming community then, we could suggest this. Is that what you're saying?
I think if you're interested in war games and you've never played one, first play Memoir, because it's not only one of the best war games, but it's one of the best games ever made. And then...
underrated. We're on underrated.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. If you like samurai, then go and check out Sekigahara, even if you don't like samurai and you're just interested in history in general. The only reason I say if you like samurai is because the theme in this is very much based around samurai, and that's the theme throughout.
Do you know what, though? You mentioned that, and I think that is a valid point to make about people who are interested in the history of, or like different eras of history. There's so many games out there, and Sekigahara definitely ticks that box where if you want like an overview, and actually saying that, quite an in-depth overview of like that era of the unification of Japan, it's not a bad way to go about learning this sort of stuff. I don't know how many people are into their history and board games. I would suggest quite a few. There's definitely a market for it, but... it's definitely one for those history buffs as well that are interested.
When Dave introduced it, he said, I could give you a brief overview. There's about a 4-page history, basically giving an overview. And I remember before we played it, I gave Dave a brief overview. And it just adds so much to the game. We were both into it. I remember Dave saying, after playing this, or when we were playing it, Dave was like, I really want to read more about this conflict now.
It makes the game the theme. And if you bother to delve into that and read up on the history, it brings the whole thing to life. And that's actually true for quite a few of those block war games out there. And I think that's the massive appeal of the historical-based games, is that you can rewrite history in undertaking the game and try things out that weren't undertaken in real life. I think that's a massive appeal to those types of games. That's why I enjoy playing them anyways. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Sekigahara. What's the official title? Is it Unification of Japan? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, Sekigahara, Unification of Japan, GMT Games. Like we said, I think it's a little bit tricky to get hold of unless you're willing to spend a bit of cash, but nevertheless, have a look for it online. Let's move on to our second pick of this episode of Back of the Shelf. Ben, what's your pick for this week?
My pick this week nicely ties into vaguely the same theme as the last one.
Oh.
I know you boys have played this game. I absolutely love a game called Battle for Rokugan.
Great choice.
I'm not entirely sure why this game isn't massive. If you asked about a map game with waging wars, fighting battles, building castles, everyone would automatically think of the Game of Thrones board game.
Yes.
That's the first one that comes to everyone's mind. And there's a couple that come off. The Lord of the Ring, the War of the Ring one. And yet this one almost never gets mentioned, which to me is crazy because I have played Game of the Thrones, second edition, twice. And both was such an emotional...
2 times was enough,
mental,
was it?
It's extraordinary. And what irritates me in Game of Thrones is eventually there's no way you're going to win because someone has bent the rules so hard that they've just eviscerated you and you've got nothing left. And you've got another good hour, 2 hours left of this game. So I tried it twice. I didn't give up on the first time. I tried it twice. And both times I felt unfulfilled or frustrated.
Yeah, I think Game of Thrones second edition, it's almost become synonymous with the game to play if you want to lose friends.
Yes.
Every time I play it, and I've played it at the full player complement both times, I think, and it was just, you're guaranteed someone's going to have a bad time. Someone's going to get into a huff. Someone's going to get trapped. Someone's going to have their game completely wrecked by like turn 3 or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely a tough war game.
We played 6-player twice for the same group. The first time we went into it, we were playing it sort of in the spirit. The second one, I had people coming and speaking to me before the game saying, whatever happens, whoever we are, me and you.
Wow. I kind of like that, though.
We're going to win.
That's getting into the theme, man.
It's just a game. And it felt wrong because everyone was looking at me and saying, you've got an open border there. Why aren't you attacking me? Looking like... So what I loved about Game of Thrones was take it in turns, put the counters down, and then flip them all over at the same time. I absolutely loved that. And so you reveal each one. You're like, oh my God, he's attacking here or he's not attacking here.
Right.
I absolutely loved that.
Yeah.
So... having come out of Game of Thrones, scarred, I started looking for a different way to get that feeling of putting the tokens down, and I stumbled across Battle for Rokugan. Now, Game of Thrones, super expensive game, massive, heavy as hell. Battle of Rokugan, tiny box, no miniatures, a few screens, everyone gets their little tokens, map in the middle, and a few cards, and that's it. And it has that. And the game is putting tokens down, flip them all over, and working out conflicts all the way through the game. And it happens you can play in less than 90 minutes, really.
Yeah.
There's just no fat on it. It's just to the bone conflict. There's a few cards that mess around with a few things. There's secret objectives. I absolutely love it. I remember the second game I played, and I sat down, and I had that overwhelming feeling of happiness. I was like, what's happening? What's happening? Oh, it's the game. It's the game that's giving it to me. It was so good. I just love it. I love it so much. It doesn't get played enough because you have to have a very specific group of people to play it with. It's conflict heavy. I have to find the right group for it.
I was going to say, and even though it is a conflict heavy, and it is an area control, that you're putting all your tokens down, whatever strategy you're undertaking, whatever units you're pledging to the battlefield, it's all secret information. So the fact that it's not so in your face as like, I'm moving these units up here and we're going to have this fight, it takes that edge off for me. It doesn't feel as conflicty as other conflict games, even though it is.
It doesn't feel as backstabby as because you have to fight. You have to fight. So you're not doing a dirty on someone. Whereas in Game of Thrones, if you put an attack down, that was like, it took a while to recover from that. So in this one, you have to fight. It's like, you have to fight in this game. You have to go for it. So it's not taken quite so personally when you go for the attack. And no one speaks about this one.
So why? Why do you think that is? Because I agree with you in everything that you said.
I think possibly, if you look at the box is tiny. And if you're looking for that dudes on a map sort of thing with people moving around little figures, well, there are no figures. If you're looking for nice little miniatures, there's no miniatures. It has a theme. Maybe that doesn't appeal. It truly baffles me, and yet you just never see it. You always see it on eBay for like 20, 30 quid. I'm like, buy the game. It's so good. And no one really does.
It does everything that Game of Thrones does in half the time or less, which is amazing. But I think it's the theme. The theme kind of lets it down a bit. I mean, if you play Legend of the Five Rings, you'll like it. If you don't play Legend of the Five Rings, you'll just think it's some kind of weird hybrid samurai meets fantasy mix. And to be honest with you, that's not something that interests me personally. So that's what lets it down slightly for me. But the game itself, I agree, is amazing. I just think maybe the theme is stopping it being picked up. That and the obvious miniatures. People want miniatures on a map, don't they?
That's what it is. It came out.
Those war gamers out there.
Yeah, it came out 2017 when the miniatures in a box started becoming a real big thing, right? You had to have these fancy miniatures, and this just didn't have any of that stuff. And I guess it just drifted into the background.
Well, it did, because it came out at the same time, I believe, as Rising Sun. I think maybe it came out at the wrong time, and that really killed it.
Maybe. Well, if you like deception, betrayal, sneaky attacks, dudes on a map but with no figures, no miniatures, nice and cheap, 20, 30 pounds, you can easily find this. This is the one.
Do you know what as well? If you like Small World and you want to step up from Small World,
yes,
get this game.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good shout, man. That's a very good shout.
That is very good, yeah.
Battle for Rokugan, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, check it out. Oh, we've got a bit of a theme going on for this episode. Let's go into our final pick then. Don't suppose you've chosen a war game, have you, Dave?
I'm going to kill the theme off immediately. Yeah, there is. I can't think of any link whatsoever between
I'm
the
sure we can make
games.
one. We can find one.
Try. So this is a game. Jerry, I know you've played this. McTav, I think you've played this. Ben, I'm almost certain you haven't. And this game is called Itchy Monkey,
Monkey.
This is ranked below 6,000 on Board Game Geek.
Wow, we're really going to the dregs of BGG here, aren't we?
Well, see, here's the thing. I already know exactly why this is. It's because it's called Itchy Monkey. And because it looks like, on the surface...
It looks like something I'd whip out for my daughter.
It does look like a child's game. You are correct.
That shouldn't affect the ranking, but yes, in terms of games, it does look like the kind of game you'd play with your children, which is absolutely fine, because there's some incredible children's games out there which shouldn't reflect on this, but I do think that's why this gets bumped down slightly.
Well, not bumped down slightly, it's down in the 6,000.
Yeah, it gets down to 6,000. So I'm going to defend this now, because I think the Itchy Monkey is probably one of the best abstract games I've ever played, and I really like abstract games, so that's saying a lot.
That's a really bold statement, man.
It is, and I stick by
Best
it.
abstract.
I stick by it, but the theme kills it. You are playing colonies of lice who are infecting monkeys, therefore making them itchy monkeys. And the idea of the game is you are trying to build a certain number of colonies on various monkeys across the board in order to win. So you have to have colonies on 3 gorillas or 4 of the same type of monkey or 5 different species. That's how you win. Now, the game is very simple, and I'll just go over the rules really briefly. On your turn, you're going to spawn some lice, and to spawn, all you're doing is putting small little cubes onto a monkey, and that's how you spawn lice.
Are the little wooden cubes the lice?
The small ones are lice, and then you've got the larger ones, which are the queens. What you're trying to do is build colonies that are a group of lice. Then, once you've spawned on one monkey, you can do any one of the 3 actions, which are jump, bump, or nitpick. Jumping is simply moving one of your lice from one monkey to an adjacent monkey. Bumping is where you move a monkey in a straight line. So the board is just hanging vines, which are straight lines down, and then you can move across. So the board is divided up into these circles so you can move around. Now, bumping is where you move one monkey with your lice on across the board, any number of spaces, and as soon as they bump into another monkey, you can move at least one or any number, so all of them if you want, of your lice onto that next monkey. And that's how you're going to be moving around the board and slowly building up your colonies. The last thing you can do is nitpick, which is a really clever aspect of the game. When somebody has 5 or more lice on a monkey, you get to just instantly remove all of those lice from that monkey. So if your opponent is spending too much time building up a load of lice ready to do that jumping or bumping action, then you can just sweep in, and instead of doing one of your actions, you can just remove all of their lice. So there's this really tactical element of trying to spread your lice out as much as possible, but you're also trying to build these colonies. The game itself then is probably about 30 minutes long. It's up to 4 players. I've played it with 2, I've played it with 3, and I've played it with 4, and it was great at all counts. If you hear the title and you see the cover, you immediately think 2 things. You think, it's probably a kid's game.
Yep.
And it's probably a bit silly. And the simple fact is, it isn't either of those things. It's not that it's not suitable for kids, but the fact is it's actually quite a deep strategic game underneath it all. And I think it's the theme and the name that really kill it in many ways. I think you could re-theme this. My only one issue with me saying all of this is that people complain, and it's quite a big thing in the hobby at the moment, about lack of themes. There's a problem with theming in popular board games particularly. You know, how many games do we need to see with sandy coloured covers about civilization building, for example? Yet there are games out there like Itchy Monkey which have themes that are very abstract and unique, but yet they don't get attention. And I wonder if this game had one of the more standard themes, if it would have more attention. But I genuinely do stand by my comment. I think this is a great abstract game, and I love abstract games, and I'd have a long list, but this is up there for me.
I agree with your point about theme, because I remember when you introduced this to us and you said, it's a fun game, Itchy Monkey and stuff. I almost feel like I was missold what the game was going to be because of the title, because of the theme and everything. I was going to be this kind of like maybe a kid's game, which, hey, some of them are great out there. I love playing some of them, and we're going to have this great time, and nits are going to be climbing over these monkeys and everything. But when it got to the table, you were totally right. I would actually say it's quite a heavy abstract game when it comes to the core of the mechanics and everything. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely up there with games like Quirkle and Blockers and everything. And it's almost, I wish they hadn't put the theme on it. There's so little of those games out there which are abstract, and the theme, maybe it does fit. I don't know how you would describe this, but I'm trying to think of games like Onitama, which I think is a great abstract game, and it feels right, the theme. Hey, That's My Fish, great abstract game, and the theme works for me. Whereas there's some out there, those great abstract games like Corridor, oh my god, my favourite abstract game. It doesn't need that theme. It doesn't need that explanation. It's just, it is what it is, right?
Yes.
And it feels like Itchy Monkey, they just, it felt like I was missold. Just don't go with the theme. Just be honest to yourself and be like, this is actually quite a really strong, in fact, abstract game, and leave it at that. I don't think it needed all that fluff around it.
It could just be blocks and cubes moving around.
Yeah, I agree. And because it's definitely one, I would suggest it's definitely one for the abstract crowd. If you're into those sorts of games, Itchy Monkey is definitely one to check out. And a major plus, which you mentioned before, 4 players. There's not many, well, there are, but big abstract games that do more than 2 players really well. And actually, this does it well. There's good group interaction, and it's fun to play with the 4-player complement on that one, I think.
I have never heard of this game. I've never seen this game. I've never even heard of this game. I'm impressed. I've never even come across this.
You've impressed Ben.
Yeah.
That's high praise indeed when you impress Ben.
I've never seen this game in my life.
That's the thing.
Is it quite easy to get hold of?
I think it's fairly widely available as far as I know. Right. I haven't looked into it recently, but
It was there. It was available.
Yeah, it looks like it's still around.
Nice. Final thoughts on Itchy Monkey?
Get it. It's better than you think it is.
Get it. Well, final pick of the week then, Itchy Monkey, which brings us to our final segment of today's episode, Shelf Spaced. Ben, this is your go-to now. Do you want to quickly explain Shelf Spaced?
Shelf Spaced is where we talk about something that we despise deeply in our beloved hobby, that we would like to remove from our beloved hobby.
I feel like that description's getting more vicious every week.
It's getting vicious. It's got some venom to it now in the intonation. Past examples have been Kickstarter and...
Exclusives.
The things we dislike in the hobby. Well, since we have a special guest with us here today, McTav, and once again going to hand the floor back to you and give you the opportunity to get something off your chest, something that perhaps you dislike about the board gaming hobby. This is your time to create some shelf space. What's your pick for this week?
My pick for this week, Jerry, is card sleeves. Protective card sleeves.
Protective? What have you got against card sleeving? You've got to tell me.
Fantastic choice.
What would David Attenborough say? I mean,
okay.
This extra plastic that's just not needed.
The basis for all arguments.
What would David say? That's the base of all arguments in board gaming, right?
That was. I didn't even get the plastic thing.
What would Attenborough say?
As I said earlier, it's a bit of a Marmite choice.
Yeah, that should be the standard.
To either be all for them, every card has to be in them, or fully against them. I think that the cards need to feel loved. They need to be battle hardened. You know, I just don't see any time or place for card sleeves.
I can see by Ben's nodding, he's got a lot of thoughts on this.
He's got something to say.
I've solidified them down into one thing. I remember when I was just starting and card sleeves were a thing. I'd never even considered using card sleeves. I've shuffled decks of cards in card sleeves and they are awful. It's like trying to shuffle photographs.
It is.
It's just so bad.
It is.
And I remember thinking, like, they are so sticky to each other. It's horrible. And I remember someone saying, if you have played a game so much that the cards are beyond use, then you could probably splash out and buy another copy of that game. You know, put another few quid in the designer's pocket because he has given you so much joy.
Yeah.
Slip him a few quid, getting you one job done. And I say, it's absolutely right. I've never, ever felt the need to sleeves card. I don't play games that roughly.
How do you feel, though, guys, about card sleeves for collectible card games like Magic the Gathering?
I've got a point on this one, because the only time I've ever had to use card sleeve is when well, hey, let me tell you this story, Ben. For a time, Dave and I went to the competitive scene of collectible card games, not naming any particular systems, but hey, it was getting a bit tasty. We're getting quite serious. We're going to regionals and stuff. We're competing for the titles here. And the particular systems that we were utilizing at the time, the games that we were playing, they required you to buy separate sleeves to cover the backs of the cards. That was like a prerequisite of the game that we were playing. You had to have card sleeves. It wasn't something that you bought with the game. It didn't come with sleeves. You had to go out and purchase sleeves separately so you could cover the backs of the cards. And I was like, well, obviously, it's ridiculous that they would design cards in such a way. It was to hide the backs of the cards. They must have been different in some way, but I remember this being a rule whenever you had to go to tournaments.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was because of tournament play.
I can't remember the reason either. There definitely was a reason, though.
I can't even remember the reason either. But because the background art was the same, but I don't know why. Anyways, it was obviously going out of our way to buy unnecessary plastic. But then it was a case of, now that my cards have tripled in thickness, I'm going to have to buy bigger deck boxes and stuff like this. It escalated quickly. It was ridiculous. I could never understand why. But hey, I loved the game. It was good fun. Had a great time.
I have sleeved my copy of Ghost Stories because when I got the expansions were different sizes slightly, which were incredibly annoying. And card sleeve saved that game for me. However, I have this issue with board game buyers who, when a new game comes out, complain that the box does not fit the cards in the game in card sleeves. The insert doesn't even fit card sleeves, as if that's necessary on the publisher's behalf to think of. Card sleeves are a little bit of an excessive thing for most games. If you can't fit the basic cards in an insert with the card sleeves, then, hey, life's hard, right?
Do you know what? I just looked up, Ben, to answer your question. The reason the tournaments were asking to sleeve cards is that so you're not able to gain information about the cards that you're drawing. Even in relaxed tournament play, you've got to have sleeves on there so that the backs of the deck are all uniform in appearance. There's no advantage in drawing cards.
That's the reason I specifically said CCGs or collectible card games, because in games like Magic the Gathering, the cards become worth a lot of money, right? So you would kind of invest in sleeves to protect them.
That's the thing, you wouldn't be playing with those cards, surely. I don't know. I've never really gotten into Magic, but if they're that valuable, are you going to be using them in play? Probably not. You're probably going to keep them in a folder in airtight vault under your house or something. I don't know.
I've got a bit of industry news here about book card sleeves.
Industry news.
So, Roxley Games, the publisher, have come up with a card system called Synth. And these are what they call synthetic cards, which are literally cards that you can bend end to end and they'll just flick back into position. Like a rubbery plastic kind of thing. And they don't need sleeving because they're just wiped down cards. And I don't know how this is going to work in the greater scheme of things, but they've come up with a system that they're going to be using in their games, or at least one game at the moment they're using it in, to kind of solve that problem, I think. The infuriating thing is, for this system, I've still seen people asking if the box fits card sleeves. No, that's kind of the point. That's all
that matters,
man. That's the point of the cards.
Get real.
But I think that's a nice compromise. If you can get some really nice cards that no longer need sleeves, hey, problem solved, right?
I'd like to imagine, like, in production of these cards, they're now contributing like 5% extra to carbon emissions that they horrendously toxic.
What David Attenborough would say about synth cards.
But what would Attenborough say? What would Attenborough say, though? Besides the environmental issue, McTav, do you have any other qualms with sleeving your cards?
No, I just like the feel of the natural cards themselves.
Oh, what a lovely answer. Attenborough would approve of that. The natural feel. Love it.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're also very sharp, aren't they?
I mean, years of playing.
When you're shuffling sleeved cards, it's
years of playing board games. You have the softest, loveliest hands. The slightest edge cuts the butter.
Yeah, it's true. Can I just quickly add something really briefly? What Ben said about when you've played a game enough that the sleeves, the cards are worn. Our copy of Biblios is like that.
Oh man, that thing is haggard. It's haggard, isn't it?
It is haggard, but it makes me happy because it shows how much we love that game, that it's just played so much that the cards are just all falling apart. They're not falling apart, but they're getting the edges are getting worn. And yeah, Ben's right. If you love a game that much, you'll probably would be happy to just invest in a copy.
Exactly.
Well,
I think if you're so precious about your game, you're not going to enjoy it as much.
And on that note, are there any other final opinions on sleeving cards?
Anyone who sleeves cards is a complete.
Wow.
Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. This week's shelf-spaced sleeving cards. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. Obviously, you know where to get in contact with us on these social media sites. In which case, that brings us to a close for this week's episode of Back of the Shelf. Obviously, massive thanks to McTav. It's been lovely having you. Have you enjoyed your experience?
I've loved it every minute. Thank you.
We aim to please. And if you did want to find us on social media, Dave, where can people look for us?
You can find us on Twitter at BackShelfPod, on Instagram at back.of.the.shelf, and on Facebook you can find us at Back of the Shelf Podcast. And you can also now find us on YouTube, Back of the Shelf.
Lovely stuff. So please do get in contact. We'd love hearing your thoughts and comments. In which case, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Itchy monkey. I've never even come across this. I've never even seen that because you look at the board and you think that's a funny looking game.